Good evening. For Londoners working in shops, pubs, theatres and businesses across the capital who woke up this morning fearing the impact the coronavirus crisis could have on their livelihoods in the last hour, some clarity on how the government will help. The Chancellor has announced a £330 billion package to help businesses stay afloat during the outbreak. Rishi Sunak said this is an economic emergency and a time to be bold, a time for courage. Well, as cases of COVID-19 in the capital reached 480, a quarter of all UK cases, the reality of the new situation hits home. This morning, there was no rush hour and seen from the air, the city is deserted. More on the new measures to help businesses in a moment. But first, here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris, with the latest.
They usually look like a swarm of worker ants on the march, but today the flow of commuters heading across London Bridge for the city was down to a trickle. This was rush hour, but you would never guess from the stream of almost empty buses. In Downing Street, the Prime Minister gave his latest update.
We must act like any wartime government and do whatever it takes to support our economy.
On Oxford Street, many shops were still open, some even had customers, but most of the people on Britain's most famous high street were here because they had no choice. Keeping a safe distance from those I spoke to, I detected worry, resignation and resentment.
I'm very angry because it's not only my life that's at risk, I'm putting others at risk as well, and it's unfair.
Why are you out in the West End today?
Because I've got to pay my mortgage, got bills to pay.
I'm very worried, especially the fact that I am over 75.
The view from above wasn't apocalyptic, but sobering. An empty Trafalgar Square. In the city of London, it looked like it was Sunday. And Covent Garden, normally a mecca for tourists and office workers in search of a bite to eat. It's lunchtime in Covent Garden. The sun's out, there's a hint of spring, but no one is taking advantage of it. It's never as quiet as this in the middle of the day.
I'm self-employed. I have bills to pay.
Richard Stingemore has been a cabbie for 20 years. Business is not good.
I'm going to have to keep coming in and trying to earn as much as I can, whether it be one job in an hour, two jobs, or whether it might be one job every 3 hours. I need to come in just to get some money together.
In the West End, businesses appeal to the Chancellor for help.
The business rates are collected by the Treasury, they could just freeze it, automatically stop, not force payment, the government covers it, and they can start collecting again once we return to normal.
The Chancellor got the message and announced a business rates holiday.
That means every single shop, pub, theatre, music venue, restaurant and any other business in the retail, hospitality or leisure sector will pay no business rates whatsoever for 12 months.
There was some comfort for those who felt compelled to work. Even at rush hour, many tubes and trains were so empty, social distancing was no problem. But this is not a picture of a buzzing city with a vibrant economy, and it's only just beginning.
Well, let's have a closer look at the measures announced by the Chancellor today. A £330 billion rescue package to support businesses. That includes a 3-month mortgage holiday for those in financial difficulty and no business rates for shops, pubs and theatres. Well, to discuss that in more detail, Simon is here, as well as billionaire philanthropist and co-founder of mobile phone retailer Phones For You, John Caldwell. We're speaking to him about that business announcement in just a moment. But first, Simon, to you, and it seems that, London is not open for business.
Yesterday, the government was focused on trying to stop the spread of the disease. Today, clearly focused on trying to stop the economy going into freefall. And as you say, London is definitely not open for business. There's a growing list of attractions and events which are closed. The Mayor has pulled the plug on all big events in Trafalgar Square, so no St George's Day celebration, no Eid. The British Museum has joined other museums in shutting its doors. The BFI is closed. The Barbican is closed. Transport for London says there are going to be fewer tube trains because so many people are following the government's advice and staying at home to work or avoiding unnecessary travel. There's no need for so many trains, so the daily timetable will start to resemble a Saturday timetable. timetable. And at Gatwick Airport, the airport bosses have announced that they've sacked 200 workers and are putting a stop to all night flights after midnight.
Good evening. From Friday, all schools will be closed because of the coronavirus. In the last hour, the Prime Minister announced that it was the right time now, and schools and nurseries would stay shut until further notice, with exams in May and June not taking place. The tougher measures are being brought in to halt the spread of the virus, which is still spreading faster in London than anywhere else in the UK. The number of cases has risen again. Those affected now at 621, with 30 people in the capital known to have died. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has more.
Today's virus update from the Prime Minister was the announcement parents had been waiting for. Some dreading it, others praying for it.
After schools shut their gates from Friday afternoon, they will remain closed for most pupils, for the vast majority of pupils, until further notice.
At the gates of a school in Ilford, parents weren't surprised.
I just think it's time, or everyone's just going to keep spreading it. So I agree it should close.
It's difficult, especially if you work. I mean, I work nights, so it's a bit different. But obviously, during the day, I need to sleep.
I think it's a good move. Probably should have been done already, in my opinion.
When they're in school, you know that they're being fed. You have to worry about the extra lunchtime and, you know, stuff like that. But when they're at home, it just gets so expensive.
For tens of thousands of Londoners, the message to work from home was meaningless. On building sites across the capital, it was business as usual, up to a point. On this housing development at Mount Pleasant, workers had their temperatures checked as they clocked on.
Well, I definitely don't feel safe, but I need to come to work.
As long as there's work to do, someone's got to do it.
If it was up to me, probably stay at home, but we have to come in.
Another group of workers put in a shift today, but there weren't as many MPs as normal for Prime Minister's questions. Social distancing came to the Commons. A London MP who works part-time as a hospital doctor wanted to know about protective clothing, or PPE, for health workers, but she began with a very personal story.
My NHS colleagues on the front line are already stressed with the pressure that they face. Last night, I visited my father in a care home and am acutely aware that I may have fed him for the very last time. We are in unprecedented times. I would like to know, where was the forward planning for PPE for our NHS and care staff?
I can certainly tell her that we have stockpiles of PPE equipment and we are proceeding, and it's very, very important for the House to understand this, we are proceeding in accordance with the best scientific advice.
The BBC pulled the plug today on EastEnders. No more episodes will be made at the studios at Boreham Wood in Hertfordshire until it's safe for the cast and crew to go back to work. The entertainment industry is a big casualty of coronavirus. Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in Southwark was the latest to shut its doors. The Globe should have been packed with 1,500 school children this afternoon, but all performances have been cancelled, and theatre bosses are left wondering how it'll survive without ticket sales. Small businesses looking for ways to survive are having to adapt. Aisha Pakravan Ovi is a professional caterer in Battersea whose work has dried up. Now she's delivering meals to local people who are stuck at home.
In the case of this gentleman, his daughter, she lives outside of London. She can't get to him, and so she asked me whether I could step in, and you know, I have the ability to.
As the number of deaths from coronavirus in London rose even higher, there was a chilling sight at Westminster Coroner's Court. The tent is a temporary extension to the mortuary.
Simon, schools now to close on Friday. What next?
Well, there's been a lot of speculation that London in particular might face tougher restrictions to try to stop the spread of the virus. As you said, more than 600 cases confirmed here, 30 patients have died. So the Prime Minister was asked today whether London would be put into lockdown, and he said it was under review. He praised the heroic efforts of people for complying with the travel and work restrictions, but said he would take whatever necessary measures. He wouldn't hesitate to take whatever measures are necessary. So, is London going to be put into lockdown? Will it face tougher restrictions? It's quite possible. It's not out of the question tonight.
All right, Simon, for now, thank you. Good evening. If you don't have to travel, don't. That's the message from London's mayor as tube stations were closed to reduce the spread of coronavirus. Sadiq Khan said people should be avoiding social contact not going to pubs and restaurants. That advice, he said, was to save lives. But the Prime Minister has ruled out the sort of lockdown seen in other European capitals and said there is no prospect of public transport in London being stopped. Our political correspondent Simon Harris on the Mayor's strong message.
People should not be travelling by any means unless they absolutely must.
The Mayor's message was clear. Too many Londoners are unwilling or unable to give up their daily commute, and it's not helping. This was the Tube during this morning's rush hour. There was no chance of social distancing here. Coronavirus has now claimed 57 lives in London.
I can't say this clearly enough. People should not be travelling by any means unless they absolutely must. The scientific advice on this is very clear. Londoners should be avoiding social interaction unless absolutely necessary. This means not going to pubs, clubs, restaurants or other social spaces.
But travel will not be banned outright.
There is no prospect of us wanting to stop public transport in London or stop the Tube or the buses. We're not going to be telling people that under no circumstances, if they really need to go to work, can they go to work. I hope people understand that.
At Hampstead, commuters weren't given the opportunity to travel. The station was shut after Transport for London introduced an emergency timetable.
I thought that they were going to reduce the service but not completely shut stations. So I had anticipated catching the Tube.
I support every measure the government seems to think is necessary. I'm not an expert on epidemiology, so I'm happy to follow government advice.
It's a bit of a hassle, but you know what? If it keeps everybody safe, then that's the best thing.
The Waterloo and City line is now closed. From tomorrow, there'll be no night tube, and up to 40 stations will shut as the transport network is pared down. It will mean fewer trains and fewer buses. Commuters will have to wait longer at stations and bus stops. But Transport for London argues a reduced service will be a more reliable service, needing fewer staff. The government has apparently ruled out the sort of lockdown seen in other major cities around the world. But at Chapel Street Market in Islington, shoppers were expecting the Prime Minister to introduce tighter restrictions in London.
I just think I'll be glad once he shuts the country down and then none of us can come out.
I think it's a good thing that it won't spread the virus, and hopefully it's not too long.
What am I going to do indoors? Play snakes and ladders with who? Myself?
Tonight, the message to Londoners from the authorities was simple. Don't travel, don't socialise, it will save lives.
Simon, the Prime Minister, speaking not long ago at that press conference. Are we any closer to knowing about any further restrictions in London?
Well, the Prime Minister and the Mayor had a meeting at lunchtime today, but we don't know what they've agreed. Earlier, Sadiq Khan was asked whether London should follow Paris and close bars, pubs and restaurants. His reply was that at the moment it's advice, but that advice might have to be replaced by bans. The Prime Minister, when he was speaking just now in Downing Street, was keen to underline the government's message that it's not looking to lock London down and there will be no ban on travel. But he didn't rule out further restrictions. I suspect they're looking for evidence that Londoners are going to follow the advice and not travel unnecessarily and not socialise.
All right, Simon, thank you.